Well, good evening, America. This is Q News Tonight, the world's first live daily gay evening news show, and it's 7 p.m. Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, and impeachment is over. Q News Tonight is live and unscripted, so anything can happen tonight, and we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBT community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and these are my co-anchors and friends, Aaron Darr and Napoleon Plays, and let's cue up the news. First, we jump right into queuing up breaking Q news. We, of course, are reporting tonight that the historic Senate vote on impeachment has just taken place in breaking news. First, we've prepared a bit of the summary of the news of this. Watch this.
The presiding officer directs judgment to be entered in accordance with the judgment of the Senate as follows. The Senate, having tried Donald John Trump, President of the United States, upon 2 articles of impeachment exhibited against him by the House of Representatives, and 2/3 of the senators present not having found him guilty of the charges contained therein, it is therefore ordered and adjudged that the said Donald John Trump be, and he is hereby, acquitted of the charges in said articles.
Well, the final vote took place at approximately 4:33 p.m. this afternoon, and there was not a unanimous on both party line votes, as Senator Mitt Romney from Utah voted to impeach. And an amazing, impassioned speech. We've prepared a little of that for you. Watch what Senator Romney said.
The grave question the Constitution tasks senators to answer is whether the president committed an act so extreme and egregious that it rises to the level of a high crime and misdemeanor. Yes, he did. The president asked a foreign government to investigate his political rival. The president withheld vital military funds from that government to press it to do so. The president delayed funds for an American ally at war with Russian invaders. The president's purpose was personal and political. Accordingly, the president is guilty of an appalling abuse of public trust.
So as our viewers just saw this evening, the United States Senate has voted to acquit President Trump on the articles of impeachment, the abuse of power in a 52-48 vote, and obstruction of Congress in a 53-47 vote. As many of our viewers might perhaps know, a 2/3 majority in the United States Senate is needed to remove a sitting president from office. However, this was not a vote that occurred on party lines. As you just saw, United States Senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, a former presidential candidate in 2012, a Republican, voted for one of those articles of impeachment, so it wasn't necessarily as partisan, citing his faith, as he is a Mormon, and citing that he did believe that President Trump had committed high crimes and misdemeanors.
We were talking about this before we came on the air. It's kind of a sad day, even though we knew exactly what was going to happen. You and I both had the same reaction separately without talking about it. We watched this live and the announcement at 4:33 p.m. today. But what's the impact today on the LGBT community? We knew this was coming. We had Iowa yesterday. We had State of the Union, and now we have this. We're into Vote 2020 for sure. What's the impact of all of this on our community?
I'll be honest, I was expecting for this to be the outcome, and it wasn't like 2016 where even when I expected it, I felt devastated in terms of what our country, or what I was seeing now in our country for the first time. But today I was messaged by a number of people specifically about Mitt Romney, as we just saw. And while Trump was as divisive as he could be, catering to his party and doing what he could, even with anecdotes, to appeal to those that will vote for him in this new year, and making all of the State of the Union about his re-election, Mitt Romney, a Republican, a Mormon Republican, was the one that started to heal and start to bridge the gap between both parties. And I think that that is why it was actually a pretty positive day from my point of view. The value that he added to last night made a little bit more of a pleasant spin.
Any thoughts on the gay community and our reaction?
Well, I think the big takeaway for this, for LGBTQ Americans, has to be that you have to vote. And not to be partisan here, but you have to vote for candidates, in particular for President of the United States in 2020, that are going to have your best interests at heart, that are going to advocate for you in any and all ways possible. And unfortunately, as we've seen during the Trump administration, it's been nothing more than anti-LGBT, especially to our trans brothers and sisters. So LGBT people need to realize that the only way that their rights are going to not so much so be up for debate, and they're not going to be held back, is going to be able to have to turn out and vote, and you're going to have to vote for a Democrat.
Well, it seems to me that that's a bullseye, and tomorrow we wake up and go, okay, this is behind us, and now we focus on November 3rd, 2020,
Exactly.
and whatever is going to happen. We move out of our breaking Q news tonight and cue up the world. We report tonight about coronavirus. We continue. Currently, at this moment, live, a cruise ship with 3,700 passengers on board has now been quarantined in Japan after 10 guests aboard the ship have tested positive for the virus. We've prepared the news on this. Watch this.
The world dream has returned to Hong Kong, though it remains unclear whether passengers will be allowed to disembark. Coronavirus symptoms can take 2 weeks to surface, meaning suspected carriers must remain in quarantine for at least that long to prevent further transmission. Health officials have begun testing the passengers and crew on board, with confirmed cases already being sent to hospitals.
Al started by giving you a lot of the statistics about this cruise ship. It is one of many that are docked outside of port, in addition to many countries that are having evacuations where their residents and citizens are flown out of China. Hong Kong workers, healthcare workers in particular, nurses and doctors, are currently on strike because they want the border to the country to be shut down. And the leader, Carrie Lam, has stated that there is a 14-day quarantine currently in effect, which is not the same as shutting down the country's borders. Interesting of note as well is that the first newborn has been given or has been diagnosed as having this virus. They were born to a mother that was also diagnosed just moments before. So this makes the earliest stage of being noted at 30 hours old of having this virus. This reminds me a lot, as we're reporting days today on the coronavirus, of the epidemic, of course, with HIV, with AIDS in the 80s, and a lot of the fear that is relevant to our community and to our recent history. A lot of the reports, especially from this cruise ship, are honestly quite frightening. There are the people that are stuck on the cruise ship for 14 days. They're locked in their rooms, they're being delivered meals, they can't open their door, and people are coming to give them those things with their masks on. One of the people that is currently a passenger stated, "A lot of people on board are anxious about what happens next. I want to know what possible measures will be taken from now on. Will we spend the next 14 days stuck on the boat? Or 10 days? What will happen to the foreign passengers? Will even those who test negative have to stay? I want to know what's going on."
Very scary to me, and we've done many stories in the last month since Q News Tonight has come on the air about coronavirus. One of the most stark statistics that we're watching now, before we move on to our next story, is that it's having a death rate percentage of transmission of about 2.3%.
There's under 25,000 cases reported and almost 500 deaths currently.
Yeah, very significant. Wow. We queue up the world in continuing to report about what's happening in the United Kingdom. An Uber driver planned to, quote unquote, unleash death in London by driving a van into a pride parade. Napoleon, tell us about what's happening here.
A 28-year-old man, last name Chowdhury, has believed that halal has permitted for the jihadis to target gays. He has a history in 2018 where he was cleared of all crimes preparing and committing an act of terrorism by waving a sword at the police at Buckingham Palace. And he was also arrested in 2019 as a counter-terrorist police interviewed him and investigated him, where they learned that within days he had planned on becoming a martyr. He's been reported, Chowdhury has believed that he was going to target, at first it was London Pride, which has hundreds of thousands of people participate, Madame Tussauds, a double-decker bus, and his sister is also reported as having known about this and not reporting. But so far, nothing has happened. So we're seeing more acts of terrorism possibly reported, at least they're being reported, but we don't know what's going on. Again, this goes back to the state of confusion we were just talking about, as more LGBTQ events are being targeted in communities around the world.
This reminds me of, I hadn't known any background information on this personally, but just listening to what you're saying, this reminds me so much warning signs that were there with the individual who I'm intentionally not going to name. They carried out this horrible assault and attack on 49 of our brothers and sisters in Orlando, Florida, at Pulse. There was a history of violence, of anti-LGBT rhetoric, and that unfortunately was gone unnoticed. And what happened happened. And this is why it's so important that we have more and more conversations that normalize the LGBT perspective, not just through Q News Tonight, but that we're normal people and that we deserve the same rights and opportunities as anyone else.
And the same right to live.
And the same right to live, exactly.
And to not be fearful every day.
Yeah.
Yes.
We move out of our world news and queue up the USA. And of course, the number one topic in queuing up the USA is the State of the Union. Last night, Trump and Pelosi had a feud exploding during the president's speech last night. We've prepared some summary of this. Watch this.
The tension between President Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was on display from the beginning, when the president appeared to snub Pelosi's handshake, and she left out the customary high privilege and distinct honor when introducing Mr. Trump.
Members of Congress, the President of the United States.
To give you context, of course, the acquittal for the impeachment has just passed. This is after the State of the Union and the debacle in Iowa with the primaries. The last time that Nancy Pelosi had seen President Trump was 4 months prior, when she had stormed out of the White House during negotiations. Of course, this started with a handshake that was not received, and then a lack of a statement as to being honorable from Trump, finally with the ripping up of the paper, which Nancy Pelosi stated was the courteous thing to do, considering the alternative. End quote. The Trump campaign spokeswoman responded back that Nancy Pelosi must be so elite that she doesn't realize what exactly she's doing by snubbing President Trump. Of course, many women in the stands were wearing white for the second year in a row in sign of women's suffrage. Others protested by, including AOC, by not showing up to the event, other Democrats. And some even spouted H.R. 3, which was a bill that they wanted to have passed that, of course, he did not push through. And this does remind me a lot, again, of the LGBT community. We have to find ways to work past what we have had put upon us, and we don't see Nancy Pelosi doing this. That's part of the controversy that we're seeing right here. Yes, she extended her hand at the beginning. Yes, she even tweeted a photo out where she stated that Democrats won't give up. She said hashtag for the people, hashtag State of the Union, SOTU, that they want to find common ground. But we're not inherently seeing that from both parties. So hopefully we can find more of a
There's a
lack of
tremendous amount of
partisanship.
comment today about the State of the Union, that we may be watching the final or the conclusion of State of the Unions in the United States, that we've become so divisive that there's really no point in having the State of the Union. If you noticed last night, President Trump spoke about 98%, they estimated, directly face-to-face to the Republican support, and it was cheerleading and no response. So it was so divisive, it was absolutely divisive.
It was, and unfortunately, you know, I watched as well last night, and it was really a missed opportunity, especially in an election year where President Trump is going to be on the ballot, and he's not just going to have to pull in Republicans; he's going to have to pull in independents, NPAs, and some Democrats. And it was really a missed opportunity because it was such a partisan speech about what he's done and what he'll continue to do, based in fabricated false truths, even saying that he's protected individuals who have pre-existing conditions, which that is so not true, referring to our people of color in this country as illegal immigrants and illegal criminals. And to that, it's very frustrating. So in solidarity with our sister Speaker Pelosi, I have to say, just time's up, Trump. And on November 3rd, I think it will be wonderful as long as the LGBTQ community turns out and that they vote, that President Trump will be no more.
All right, we continue queuing up the USA, and we stay with State of the Union. Last night during the State of the Union, America was shocked when radio host Rush Limbaugh was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom after disclosing his fight with cancer. We've prepared some news on this. Please watch.
And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity. I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
During last night's State of the Union address from President Trump, he placed Rush Limbaugh, who's very known for his conservative opinions, with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Rush Limbaugh has recently come out in the fact that he has been diagnosed with cancer. This happens in the State of the Union address, which was pretty unprecedented because this normally doesn't happen. And it talks to the fact that, this president, this administration, this State of the Union address was nothing more than a spectacle. It was a reality show. It was offensive. And it speaks furthermore to the partisan divide that we see that Trump does. And in the State of the Union, him just really speaking to his base and awarding individuals who continuously have a history of dividing this country.
I have watched so many State of the Unions. I've never seen anything even close to this moment.
I also can't ever recall either Democrats or Republicans during a State of the Union chanting 4 more years, 4 more years.
Yeah.
It is important to remember that pre-Civil War there were feuds, cane beatings even, feuds, physical altercations before the actual war started. So we can see maybe a similar path is happening right now. Obviously, the State of the Union is not even an implied power. It's a direct power to give a president voice over the country. Okay. And speaking of voices, are LGBT voices important to you? Can the news of the world have a gay community perspective? If you, like us, think the answer is a resounding yes, then like and subscribe to Q News Tonight on YouTube and Facebook. Do our gay cultural stories impact you, your friends, and family? Start a watch party. Get your circle involved in our conversation as it supports the gay community.
Absolutely. We continue in queuing up the USA by reporting an anti-trans bill criminalizing doctors may be dead on arrival in Florida. We've prepared this to tell you about what's happening here in our home state of Q News Tonight. Watch this.
We are here to stand together and demand that the Florida legislature see these attacks on LGBTQ people, and especially over the last 3 years on the transgender and non-binary community. House Bill 1365, the Transgender Youth Medical Care Ban, is a dangerous and mean-spirited bill that would jail doctors up to 15 years for providing life-saving, best practice care for transgender youth.
This bill would have put doctors in jail for up to 15 years or worth a $10,000 fine. This, of course, comes in light of the bill, which became a workshop where all parties involved got to speak, got to hash out their opinions. And, of course, in the end, the vote was canceled with Republican representatives stating that they would not meet again and that this was an unlikely thing to be reassigned to another group. One of the speakers was Jeanette Jennings, of course, the mother from I Am Jazz, popular reality show. And she stated that she would rather have a healthy, living daughter than a dead son. And I can't imagine any parent would really feel the opposite way. Other bills that exist of similar nature exist, including in South Dakota, where they're currently going through the House.
We certainly at Q News Tonight applaud. We are coming to you, as we say, from the gayest place on planet Earth here in Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This is our state, and we applaud Equality Florida, which is one of the best equality advocacy organizations in the United States. We continue by doing something a little lighter and fun. It's called Queuing Up Entertainment. And we're very happy to report that Harrison Ford says, "I can't wait to return to Indiana Jones Part 5. And the producer of the movie says it's not a reboot. Erin, tell us about what's happening with Harrison Ford.
Yes, Harrison Ford is reprising his role as Indiana Jones in the 5th installment of its franchise. Like you said, Al, it's not a reboot, it's yet a continuation. They're still working on the script, yet there's an upcoming 5th installment of Indiana Jones that is set for release in 2021 with Steven Spielberg directing.
You guys know, I was trained to throw a whip by the same person that trained him for the original movies. It is a difficult skill to push for. Oh yeah, absolutely. I can crack a whip just like Indy can. I take great pride in that.
We're gonna prove that, Erin. You and I are gonna prove.
You are happy to get behind the whip. I will make sure that I hit my mark.
Are you a big Harrison Ford fan?
No, I'm so weird, I guess. I've never seen like a Star Wars or any of these kind of like installments or Star Trek or Indiana Jones or anything. I've seen Sex and the City 1 and 2.
There's millions of gay guys that are going to be crying when they hear this.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford is super sexy.
He makes great cosplay, I promise you.
He was in the past. I thought he was good looking. I'm not really into him now.
Really? Okay.
No.
All right. Let's continue queuing up entertainment. And we're reporting about a premiere that is taking place of the movie Jose. And Jose's star, Enrique Salanic, has been denied entry into the U.S. again. We've reported on this at Q News Tonight, but now it affects us here in South Florida because he cannot make next week's Miami premiere because of the continued denial of his participation. To begin this story, we've asked a reporter to tell us about it, and no other than Mr. Salanic. Watch this.
Hi, my name is Enrique Salanic, and I am the protagonist of Jose. Jose started its way in movie theaters in New York City on January 31st, and I was invited to present Jose in New York and other cities in the U.S. However, I was denied the visa the 2 times I tried. The USA Embassy here in Guatemala told me that I'm a flight risk and that I could misuse the visa if I was given the visa. And of course, it's a pity that I'm not there to present the movie, but it's a great message of love to the world. And it's very relatable in many human levels. And I think it's important for it to be there after traveling the world in many film festivals. And I also want to thank Q News Tonight for giving me this time and their energy. And I want to also take the chance to say hi to all my friends who are in the US for their support. Thank you again.
Salanic will not be here for the premiere of his movie, of course. He returned back to Guatemala, as he stated, after being in the U.S. for college and cannot come back because he won't be given a visa as he is a flight risk. However, he stated that he wanted to get more awareness for his movie and for the values that it presents because of this, and that's why we honor him by discussing this now.
Yes, and in doing so, Q News Tonight is part of the Happening Out television network. We are the Daily News. But you can also watch the best of entertainment live every Monday at 8 p.m. on happening.fun. We are also part of the most popular live gay TV show in the entire world every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on It's Happening Out. And it's Wednesday, so it's coming up real soon. It's a talk show like television's The View with a whole lot of gay people. And when I say gay, I mean gayer than Al's shirt.
You know, it's funny, and we'll talk later.
It looks like curtains from Pier 1, guys. It looks like curtains from Pier 1.
We're going to report. At 8 o'clock tonight, we do It's Happening Out, the most popular live gay TV show in the world. We're going to report our view numbers for January were 1.8 million views in the month of January. So we're very excited, and we thank you, America. We are going to continue in queuing up gay culture, and we're very happy to report that Westminster will celebrate LGBT History Month with a unique City Hall exhibition. Erin, tell us about what's happening here.
Yeah, this is so exciting. Even just reading about this online and looking at some of the pictures, it was awesome. So Westminster is celebrating the LGBT History Month with a unique exhibition. Rare photos of gay pride marches in the 1970s, London's first super club Bang, and of legendary drag queens, singers, and actors like Divine are on display at Westminster City Council's Council of Offices in Victoria. The council's LGBTQ staff network drew on material, and it's been quite interesting, to say the least, just looking at it. This exhibition features the work of gay news photographers who have captured famously imagery of the earliest gay pride marches in 1972 until the 1980s, and other notable moments, including the opening of the Gays the Word bookshop in 1972 and protests against the store for sacking a queer employee in 1976. So very, very interesting to see how they will display the history of the LGBTQ community.
I'm really thinking about going to see this because I think it's a great bookend as a counter alternative to our Stonewall celebration that took place last year, and this being in the UK, I think quite exciting. We continue in queuing up health tonight and sadly report that the top world HIV researcher, Frank Plummer, has died at 67. We prepared some news about Mr. Plummer. Watch this.
Well, we were working in Africa on ordinary sexually transmitted diseases when the HIV problem kind of landed on us. And we did a lot of the fundamental research that explained the epidemic. Our work from Kenya in the mid-'80s to early '90s transformed HIV prevention globally. So everything we discovered has been turned into public health practice, which is reducing HIV transmission globally.
Plummer had many contributions, of course, to HIV, where he discovered that it could be transmitted through breast milk, and also that a few people, a minority group of people in Nairobi, sex workers, were immune to the actual disease. In addition to having awards from the Order of Canada and Canada's Gairdner Whitman Award, he also had a leadership role in SARS, H1N1 flu, Ebola, and helped with a lot of other epidemics. So we lost a true person today that influenced tens of thousands of lives of people that could have gotten or did have HIV.
Well, I'm very proud to be associated with both of you at Q News tonight, that we bring news like this to the LGBT world, because otherwise, well, it's important in certainly scientific or medical circles. The LGBT community is really fundamentally affected by his passing, and this kind of news is the kind of thing that we want to bring at Q News tonight. And we remind you that we are broadcasting from our news set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center here in Wilton Manors and Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Of course, it's so easy to make the joke about Erin that we're broadcasting from the gayest place on planet Earth, and Erin sits here to help us illustrate that point. We also thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living in Fort Lauderdale, that has helped us build this great set here in the middle of the World AIDS Museum. We move out of our notice here and talk about queuing up Vote 2020. Tonight, you're the first to learn that Q News Tonight is going to do a special broadcast next Tuesday, February 11th, in conjunction with our 7 p.m. Q News Tonight show. We will broadcast for 1 hour, and then at 8 o'clock next Tuesday, February 11th, we will continue for the first ever historic LGBT broadcast coverage of the New Hampshire primary. We have all kinds of guests coming in, experts from the different campaigns, candidates, and much, much more that will be anchored right here on Q News tonight. We prepared something about the primary first. Watch this.
Tuesday's primary here in New Hampshire, but with no verifiable results and the possibility that we may never get completely accurate and reliable and complete data from Iowa, it's as if they now have only a week to fight a fresh contest. There's no incentive for somebody to drop out just yet. There's nobody who can declare outright victory, although several rival camps this morning are trying to do that in different ways. And it is very likely that the situation in Iowa will end up in court unless the Iowa Democratic Party can produce the results for the first round of caucusing, that second round that sets the delegate count, and then, of course, the final count on who exactly gets what.
Well, New Hampshire is going to be very important, and we're very excited as we put this slide up to show you. This is going to be the first live LGBT broadcast of the New Hampshire primary results next Tuesday at 8 p.m. on Q News Tonight. Many, many people are coming in for this special broadcast that's going to help us analyze what's going on in New Hampshire and why it's important to all of us. And in conjunction with that, New Hampshire is more important than ever because we have breaking news at this moment that there is an update in the Iowa caucus results, and it appears that the first gay candidate ever in history has won the first primary of the Iowa caucuses. With the amount of results in, Erin, tell us about what's happening in Iowa.
So 86% of precincts are reporting as of about 30 minutes ago, stating that Pete Buttigieg continues his lead over his fellow Democratic candidates at 26.7%. Senator Sanders coming in second at 25.4%. Senator Elizabeth Warren coming in at 18.3%. Biden, former Vice President Biden, coming in fourth at 15.9%, and finally fifth is Senator Amy Klobuchar at 12.1%.
If these numbers hold on, it's very close. History is made that the first gay presidential candidate has won the first primary caucus in United States history.
And will this momentum build and make him viable in New Hampshire?
Absolutely. And we're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes, approximately 8 p.m., not approximately, at 8 p.m. Tonight at It's Happening Out. So make sure you tune in. Before we say goodnight tonight, we want to say we thank you very much. When we talk about this being the first live evening, daily gay evening news show in the world, what a mouthful.
It's a mouthful.
That's the way we like it.
Here's the proof of it. Last week, this show is principally in YouTube, not Facebook, principally in YouTube. And last week, Q News Tonight was watched by more than 90,000 people in YouTube. Thank you very much. A brand new LGBT evening news show live, and 90,000 of you watched last week. One of the reasons is because we end the show, even with all of the news that we talk about, with good news. And tonight is no different. We're happy to report that Kansas City Chiefs player has celebrated his Super Bowl win by covering the adoption fees of more than 100 sheltered animals. And everyone at Q News Tonight thought this was good news. Good night, and watch this.
Tonight here, America Strong, the Super Bowl champ who celebrated the big win and then celebrated his pet project. Tonight, we celebrate him. Tonight, he's one of the Super Bowl champions, both on and off the field. Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle Derek Nottie, number 91, celebrating his team's historic win, making a confetti angel, and then making a giant donation to a local Kansas City animal shelter. Derek is a dog lover, and that's his dog Rocky, paying the adoption fees for every single dog at KC Pet Project, more than 100 of them. That's Walrus heading home, Raggedy Ann too, and that's 2-month-old Huddle with his new dad, Steven.